Let me tell you how a single glass of champagne almost erased me, and how I turned that exact moment into the biggest revelation my toxic family never saw coming. It happened at my brother Jason's 5th wedding anniversary. The kind of over-the-top soiree where everyone's teeth are too white, their smiles too tight, and their lies wrapped in sequins and stemware. It was held at the Wexley Estate Ballroom, our father's pride and joy, with chandeliers imported from Vienna and waiters trained not to flinch when a billionaire's wife throws a tantrum. But that night was a slow-burning grenade dressed in candlelight and champagne flutes. I stood near the back of the ballroom in a beige cocktail dress I hated, tight at the waist, itchy at the neckline, and so bland it may as well have been called Shut Up and Disappear. My stepmother, Candace, had sent it to my apartment in a white box with a note that read, "Wear this. It's appropriate." That was Candace's brand of kindness, shaped like a noose and tied with a bow. People laughed around me, took selfies, praised Jason and his perfect influencer wife Kimberly like they were royalty instead of a man-child and a brand deal in heels. My father was schmoozing with the mayor, his hand resting on Candace's lower back like she was a possession instead of a person. Me? I was barely acknowledged, just a ghost with a last name too inconvenient to erase. I held a glass of champagne I didn't ask for, didn't even want, and watched as Candace giggled with a gallery of cosmetic surgeons and their trophy wives. That's when it hit me, not a buzz, not a flush, something else. My arms felt heavy, like I was underwater. My head was clouded, my balance off just enough to alarm me. I put the glass down and slipped out, trying to breathe, telling myself I was imagining it. And then she stopped me. A woman, mid-30s, sharp eyes, auburn hair pulled into a tight bun, blocked my path in the hallway. "Are you Emily?" she asked. I hesitated. "Yes." She leaned in, her voice low and urgent. "Your stepmother dropped something in your drink." I blinked. "What?" I watched her. "I'm security for high-profile events." She pulled something from her purse and dropped it in your glass, stirred once, and acted like nothing happened. But I saw her. This wasn't accidental.
Ister her.
My pulse roared in my ears. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Off," I admitted. "A little dizzy." "That's enough," she said. "If you can, switch the glasses. Make it look casual. Don't drink anymore." She handed me her card, Elena Brooks, private security, and disappeared down the corridor like she was never there. I walked calmly back to the table, my stomach twisted in knots. Candace was distracted, smiling at a photographer like she hadn't just tried to poison me. Her glass was nearly identical to mine. I swapped them.
Clean. Quick.
Nobody noticed. And then I waited. 20 minutes later, my father stood up, tapping his glass like he was a damn Kennedy. "To love, loyalty, and legacy," he said, eyes moist with pride as Jason stood beside him, arm around Kimberly's waist. Candace raised her glass, the one meant for me, and looked straight at me as she sipped. I held her gaze. A beat.
2.
Then her hand trembled. Her eyes twitched. The glass slipped.
Shattered. She dropped.
Right there, mid-toast, in front of 120 guests, Candace collapsed to the floor, convulsing slightly, gasping for breath. Kimberly screamed. Jason rushed over. Waiters fumbled. My father shouted for help. And me? I sat still. Heart pounding, hand steady, because I knew exactly what had just happened. That drink was meant for me. Chaos erupted. The paramedics arrived within 10 minutes. Candace was foaming slightly by the time they wheeled her out. The party was over, the fairy tale fractured. No one knew the full story yet, but the cracks were starting to show. She'd tried to erase me.
And now?
I had a witness. I had her glass. And I had a secret weapon she never saw coming. By morning, the internet exploded. My cousin Jenna texted, "You're trending." A video had surfaced. Candace laughing, sipping, then collapsing, and me? Just sitting there.
Calm.
Too calm. Comment sections exploded. Why isn't she shocked? Did anyone see that look between her and Candace? Creepy AF. Everyone loves a villain when she wears beige. Detective Marissa Keene called around noon. "We'd like to speak with you again, Emily." Her tone was calm, but I could hear the tension laced behind it. I went. No hesitation. The interview room smelled like coffee and bureaucracy. Keene sat across from me, fingers steepled over a thin manila folder.
"We ran the tests," she said.
Scopolamine. Not enough to kill, but enough to disorient. Memory loss. Confusion. Fainting. I nodded. "I believe it." She raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I was supposed to drink that glass." "Explain." And I did. I told her about Elena. The switch. The warning. The panic. Keene didn't blink. "Why would your stepmother want to harm you?" I leaned in. "Because I found the clause. The one buried in my mother's prenup. The one that says if my father ever remarries, the new wife gets nothing. No estate money. No property. No trust fund." Keene sat up. "You have proof?"
"Yes."
And she knew I did. 2 months earlier, a letter arrived from a Savannah law firm. My mother's original attorney. Inside, a photocopy of the prenup with a post-it note. "You need to see this." I did. It was clear. If Dad remarried, the next wife forfeited all rights to anything tied to my mother's assets. Every mansion, every stock payout, every cent Candace flaunted, illegally hers. And I had the paper trail. I made the mistake of mentioning it on a call I thought was private. 2 days later, the beige dress arrived with the party invite. It wasn't a gift. It was bait. "You understand how this looks," Keene said. "You swap the drinks." She collapsed. "That's motive, Emily." "I didn't poison her," I said. "I just refused to drink what was meant for me." "We'll need that clause. And the witness. You'll have both." 3 days later, Candace was discharged from the hospital. No call.
"No epalegi."
But her lawyer sent me a letter accusing me of defamation and endangerment. I smiled. Good. She was scared. The next family dinner was at Dad's estate. I walked in like I owned the place. Jason's jaw dropped. Dad frowned. Candace was pale, her lipstick smudged at the corners. When she saw me, her spine straightened. "Hello, Candace," I said. "How's your memory?" "Still fuzzy," she whispered. "Mine's crystal," I said. "So is the security footage. So is the clause." Jason exploded. "You're destroying this family." I looked him in the eye.
"No."
"I'm exposing it." Candace struck back with a local interview, playing the victim. I was blindsided. She always resented me. No mention of the prenup. Or the poison. Just tears and soft focus camera angles. The comment section lit up. Jealous stepdaughter. Drama queen. Unstable. That night, Elena called. "You ready?" she asked. "More than ready." We met at a downtown cafe. She handed me a flash drive and transcripts. Footage of Candace looking around, then dropping something into a flute. Another clip of her whispering to a server, who conveniently disappeared after the party. This wasn't impulsive. It was calculated.
"Elena."
I said, "Release it." And she did. The independent journalist posted everything.
"No nerashchen."
Just raw footage, timeline quotes. Within 2 hours, Candace was trending again. But this time, the questions were different. Is that a pill in her hand? Where's the server? Sketchy as hell. Then my father called. "Emily, we need to talk." I answered. He sounded older, smaller. "I didn't know about the clause," he said. "If I had." I cut him off. "You let her bury me long before she tried to drug me." "What do you want?" he asked. "I want the truth."
"Public."
"I want her out of my mother's house. And I want what was mine. With interest. Come by tomorrow. We'll talk terms." I didn't show up timid. I wore beige again, but this time it was tailored, elegant, chosen by me. I sat across from my father at the same table where Candace used to hold court. He slid a folder toward me. "You win," he said. Inside, reinstated trust. Transferred assets. My name back on deeds Candace tried to erase. "She left last night," he added. "I don't know where." "She ran." I said. He looked at me, shame thick in his eyes. I should have protected you. You didn't try, I replied. A week later, the estate was legally mine. I restored everything Candace boxed up, the garden, the photos, the piano room. Then came the knock. Jason. I need to tell you something, he said. She told me about the pill. Said it'd just make you too loopy to argue. I didn't think she'd actually go through with it. So, you stayed silent. I was scared. Of her. Or of losing your cut? He didn't answer. I shut the door. Weeks passed. Candace was dropped from nonprofits. Her boutique business lost key investors. No one said a word to me. I gave no interviews. Posted no selfies. Just rebuilt. Because sometimes, the quietest survival is the loudest revenge. 3 months passed. Long enough for the tabloids to move on, for Candace's name to quietly vanish from committee rosters, and for most people to pretend they'd never raised a glass in her honor. But beneath the surface, the tension in my family had thickened like smoke waiting for a spark. That spark came on a Thursday morning, just after sunrise, when I received a certified envelope with no return address. Inside, a subpoena. Candace was suing me for intentional infliction of emotional distress and financial sabotage. My hands trembled, not from fear, but rage. She wasn't just trying to erase me anymore. She was trying to rewrite the entire narrative. I called my attorney, who sighed like he'd seen it coming. She's bleeding out her assets and needs a distraction. This is smoke and mirrors, but we'll fight it. That day, I walked into my father's estate not as a daughter, but as a storm. Jason was already there, arms crossed, face pinched with that same fake concern he wore when he wanted to look impartial. You need to stop this, he said the second I stepped inside. Stop this. I repeated, eyes narrowing. She tried to drug me. You knew. You said nothing. Now she's trying to drag my name through the dirt, and you want me to stop. You're tearing the family apart, he hissed. There's no family left to tear, I said coldly. Just you clinging to the illusion that Candace didn't poison more than a drink. She poisoned everything. That's when our father walked in, wearing his old college sweatshirt like he was trying to be the reasonable patriarch. This has gone far enough, he said. You've made your point, Emily. My point. I laughed bitterly. You mean the part where I proved she tried to poison me? Or the part where I reclaimed everything she tried to steal? She's suing you, he said quietly. If you escalate, she'll drag this family through court for years. I walked up to him, close enough to see the guilt he tried to bury behind old man weariness. Let her drag, I whispered. I've got time. I've got evidence. And I've got nothing left to lose. The next day, I walked into the deposition room like it was a runway. Candace was already seated on the opposite side of the table, dressed in all white like she was auditioning for sainthood. Her attorney, a greasy man with a fake tan and an expensive watch, offered a smirk I ignored. Miss Miller, he began, were you aware that your actions and the publication of certain video evidence caused significant distress to my client, resulting in loss of income, personal trauma, and social ostracization? I smiled. You mean when I didn't die from the poison she intended for me and decided to survive publicly? Candace's jaw tightened. Her knuckles went white against the table. There's no concrete evidence she meant you harm, he said. I reached into my folder and pulled out a screenshot. Candace on video, dropping a pill into the flute. So this is what, a vitamin? She wanted to make sure I got my daily B12. Objection, the attorney said. This is inappropriate. What's inappropriate? I said, my voice rising. Is sitting across from the woman who smiled while slipping something into my drink and then tried to sue me because she didn't get away with it. Candace finally spoke. Her voice brittle, lips trembling just enough to fool someone who hadn't grown up listening to her manipulate rooms like a symphony. You've always hated me, she said. I tried to bring you in, make you part of this family. You tried to replace my mother, I snapped. You tried to steal her money, her house, her legacy. And when you found out I had proof, you tried to silence me. That's a fantasy, she whispered. No, it's evidence, I said. The only fantasy was you thinking I'd stay quiet. The deposition ended in chaos. Her lawyer threatened countersuits. Mine calmly outlined defamation charges. I walked out first. Candace stayed behind, and for a second, just a second, I saw it. Not fear, not hatred,
but doubt.
like the walls of the castle she'd built on lies were finally starting to buckle. But the real confrontation came a week later. A private gala. One my father insisted I attend because it was in honor of your mother's foundation, and he thought showing unity would calm donors. I wore black.
Sharp. Sleek.
The opposite of beige. When I entered the ballroom, the crowd stilled. Whispers followed me like perfume. Candace was already there, surrounded by her remaining loyalists, thin-lipped society women in glittering gowns and fake sympathy. My father took the mic to begin the evening. Tonight, we honor the legacy of Claire Miller, a woman who stood for grace, resilience, and family. I stepped forward. Then maybe we should start by acknowledging how her name was almost erased. Murmurs erupted. My father froze. Jason's face turned to stone. I kept going. My mother's foundation was hijacked by someone who married into this family and then tried to bury the very legacy we claim to celebrate. Emily, my father warned. Sit down.
No, I said.
Not anymore. I turned to the room. 3 months ago, at a family celebration, I was nearly poisoned. The woman who did it is here. She smiled. She posed for photos. And then she tried to erase me from existence.
Why?
Because I found the truth.
Candace stood.
This is inappropriate. What's inappropriate? I said, my voice steady, is pretending this family is anything but broken. What's inappropriate is building wealth on a dead woman's trust fund and then trying to erase her daughter when she asks questions. I pulled out a copy of the clause, signed and sealed. This is real. This is binding. And from this moment on, anyone who supports Candace Reeves is standing on stolen ground. The silence that followed was the kind that splits lives in half. One of the donors stood up and said, "If this is true, then I can't in good conscience continue funding any project with Candace's name on it." Another followed, and another. The foundation meeting dissolved into a flood of canceled checks and quiet apologies. Candace walked out, red-faced, alone. I stood taller than I ever had in my life. Not because I'd won, but because I had finally stopped shrinking. 2 days later, her case was dropped. Public pressure. Legal evidence. Her lawyer backed out. Jason texted, "You could have handled that differently." I replied, "So could you." He never responded. My father resigned from the board of the foundation that same week. And me? I took over. Not out of revenge, but restoration. I put my mother's portrait back in the foyer. I renamed the charity housed to her full name. And for the first time in decades, I hosted a family dinner. A real one. My aunt, my cousins, friends who remembered Claire Miller as she was. We toasted with champagne. Real champagne. No poison. Just truth. And as I stood there, surrounded by laughter not forced, smiles not fake, and the warmth of a house no longer hiding its shadows, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was rebuilding. And the echo of Candace's collapse was no longer the end of my story. It was just the beginning. 3 weeks later, I received an invitation I never expected. A wedding. Not just any wedding. Jason and Kimberly were renewing their vows in some desperate PR move to restore their image. It was happening at the Ridgemont Country Club, Candace's old territory, the same place where she used to host luncheons and give speeches about grace under pressure, while hiding every dagger she ever threw behind her back. The envelope was thick, the gold script overly ornate, and tucked inside was a note in Jason's handwriting. "This family needs healing. Let the past stay buried. Please don't make a scene." I laughed. Out loud. In the middle of my kitchen. Let the past stay buried? They tried to bury me. So yes, I went. I wore red. Not just any red, crimson. Unapologetic, clingy in all the places Candace once told me to smooth out. As I walked into the reception, Every head turned. I saw them, Jason's friends, the business partners who'd silently watched the fallout, the committee women who used to pretend I didn't exist, and of course, Candace. She was seated at the VIP table in beige again, but this time the fabric didn't flatter. It clung like regret. Her hair was thinner, pulled back too tight. Her smile was brittle, but her eyes? Still sharp, still venomous. I walked straight to the open bar. When Jason finally approached, he looked tired. The kind of tired that comes from holding up a lie too long. "Emily," he said, "thanks for coming. I really hoped that I'd behave. I cut in. That I'd swallow everything the way I always used to." "Please," he whispered. "Not today. Kimberly's parents are here. Our investors. There's already been enough drama." I tilted my head. "Then maybe you should have invited someone else to play the role of sister." His jaw tensed. "I'm trying to fix this." "No," I said. "You're trying to control this. There's a difference."
He sighed.
"You're still angry. I'm still breathing, Jason. That's more than I was supposed to be doing, remember?" His eyes flicked toward Candace. "You really think she wanted you dead?" I stared at him. "She drugged my drink, Jason. What do you think?" He didn't answer. The vows started, and I stood at the back of the ceremony space, watching them hold hands and smile for the crowd. All pageantry. Kimberly wore white like she hadn't cried in her Range Rover the day the scandal hit the news. Jason read vows like he hadn't sold out his own sister for convenience. Then it happened. Candace stood up during the speech portion, took the mic, smiled. "I just want to say something," she began, voice trembling. "To my family, to my stepchildren, and to the woman who has tried to ruin me." Murmurs broke out. Jason turned, panic flashing across his face. Candace's smile sharpened. "Yes, Emily. I'm talking about you." I didn't move. I just raised an eyebrow. "You have spun this entire fantasy to make yourself look like some kind of survivor," she said, eyes locked on mine. "But you were always dramatic. Always needy. Your mother babied you. And when I stepped in to give you structure, you painted me as a villain." She turned to the crowd. "I did not try to poison anyone. And the footage that surfaced? Misinterpreted. That pill was a prescription. For me. I was unwell that night." The room buzzed. I stepped forward slowly. "Are you finished?" I asked. Candace laughed. "Go ahead, Emily. Tell your side. Play the victim again." I looked at her, at the crowd, and then I took out my phone. "Elise," I said, "are you watching the live stream?" Her voice echoed through the Bluetooth speaker I held up, loud and clear. "Elise," I said calmly, "can you confirm what you saw that night?" Elise's voice didn't waver. "I saw Candace Reeves slip a pill into Emily's champagne glass and stir it. I've worked private security for 12 years. That was not a medication." Gasps. Whispers. Kimberly dropped her bouquet. Candace froze. "And Elise," I continued, "did you also submit your testimony to the civil court?" "Yes." "Sworn affidavit, time-stamped footage, all filed last week. Your attorney has copies." Candace's face drained of color. I walked up the aisle. "You know what's funny?" I said to the room. "They always said I was dramatic. Too sensitive. Too emotional. But it turns out being emotional doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you feel the knife when it hits." Jason tried to step in front of me. "Emily, please." "No," I said. "You don't get to please anymore." I turned back to the crowd. "This woman," I said, pointing at Candace, "tried to erase me to keep what she stole. And now she wants sympathy. She wants to rewrite the story before the court finishes reading it." Candace opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I handed the mic to the wedding planner. "You can continue the ceremony. Just know you'll be renewing vows under a sky that remembers every storm you tried to cover up." And I left. By that evening, video of Candace's public meltdown was everywhere. Elise's voice. My confrontation. Candace's face frozen mid-denial. She tried to release a statement. No one believed her. Jason called. I didn't answer. My father emailed me. Enough is enough. I replied. Asterisk, I agree. And if you want to keep whatever's left of your reputation, stay out of my way. Asterisk. The lawsuit was dropped 2 days later. Candace went radio silent. A week after that, her company filed for bankruptcy. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post a thing. I just opened the old locked room in my mother's house, the one Candace said was too sentimental, and restored it piece by piece. Her piano, her library, the garden, a home with no lies in the floorboards. Because survival was never the endgame. This was reclamation. And I wasn't finished yet. It took less than a month for the vultures to descend on Candace's crumbling world. Investors pulled out. Her PR firm released her. Even the country club revoked her membership. Quietly, of course, but with enough smugness that the headlines didn't need embellishment. Jason tried to salvage what was left, but he was a shell, half disgraced, half drowning in the fallout of a marriage built on convenience and cowardice. I could have walked away then, left the ruins behind, and called it justice. But justice wasn't what I came for. I came for truth for legacy. For every stolen memory, silent scream, and gaslight smile. And truth doesn't whisper, it burns. So when the letter came, a final, desperate attempt at mediation from Candace herself, I accepted. The location, the estate. The same house where my mother had died. The same house Candace had stripped, sanitized, and sold to a shell company to hide the trail of manipulation. But what she didn't know, I'd already bought it back.
Quietly.
Legally. In full. Under her nose. She thought she was summoning me back to the scene of the crime. She didn't realize she was walking into my house. I arrived first. Unlocked the doors. Let the memories breathe. The echo of my mother's laughter in the hallway, the faded smell of lavender, the piano keys untouched for years, all of it wrapped around me like armor. I waited in the drawing room, where the light hit the portrait Candace once tried to remove. My mother, in gold and gray, eyes knowing. Candace entered like she owned the place. Still in beige. Still brittle. But this time, slower. Older. Her power was gone, and all she had left was the performance. Emily, she said, clasping her hands. I'm glad you agreed to this. We've both said and done things. Save it, I interrupted. This isn't a reconciliation. She blinked, taken aback. This is a reckoning. Her throat bobbed. I don't know what you think you'll gain. I already have everything you thought I'd lose, I said. The house. The evidence. The public. You lost the minute you made me your enemy. Candace took a seat, hands trembling slightly. You don't understand the pressure I was under. Your mother, she never prepared you for what this family really required. You were soft. I had to be hard, or everything would have fallen apart.
No, I said.
You didn't make the hard choices. You made the cruel ones. You always wanted someone to blame, she hissed suddenly, her voice cracking. You never saw what I did for you. I cleaned up your messes, defended you when your father wanted to cut you off, protected your reputation. You drugged me. The room fell silent. You drugged me to stop me from talking, I said quietly. From telling the truth. You thought if I fell hard enough, no one would listen when I stood back up. Her lip quivered. You were going to destroy the family. I was going to survive it. We stared at each other. For the first time, I saw it, fear. Not the tactical kind she used to manipulate people, but real, wide-eyed fear. She was watching the tower she'd built collapse on top of her, and there was nothing left to brace it. I stood. Walked to the grand cabinet she once kept locked. Pulled out the original deed. The letters. The bank statements. All the documents she'd buried to take control after my mother died. And finally, the medical report, the one she'd suppressed after my hospitalization. I placed them on the table in front of her. Signed.
Sealed.
Witnessed. Every thread leads back to you, I said. You wanted me to disappear. Now I'm the only one left standing. She lunged. Tried to snatch the papers. I stepped back. Try it, I said coldly. I dare you. She froze, trembling. You know what I realized? I said. You never hated me. You envied me. Because my mother loved me in ways no one ever loved you. You were the outsider, Candace. The second wife. The substitute. And you spent your entire life trying to erase the one thing that proved you weren't enough. Her voice cracked. I gave this family everything. And still, I said, leaning in, no one came to your defense. She sank back into the chair, eyes glassy. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to sign this confession. You're going to surrender your remaining assets to the trust my mother set up for the community center you tried to shut down. You're going to disappear. There was no memoirs and no redemption arcs. Just silence. And if I don't, I smiled. Then I release everything. And the only thing worse than being hated will be being forgotten. She stared at the papers. Then, slowly, with hands shaking, she picked up the pen.
And signed.
When she left, she didn't say goodbye. Just disappeared into the long hallway of the house she no longer owned. I watched from the doorway as her car pulled away. The wind picked up, rattling the roses outside. It was over. Not just the battle. The war. I walked to my mother's old room. Opened the window. Let the evening light pour in. The air was clean now. No lies in the walls. No poison in the glass.
Just me. And peace.
For the first time in years, I slept.